start today's session. As some of you are aware, late this week we lost one of our most loved and cherished sea ranchers, Jim Gallagher. And if we could begin the session with a moment of silence for Jim Gallagher, Sea Rancher of the Year 2014. Thank you. My name is John Fiorenti, and as chair of the Sea Ranch Vision Committee, I'd like to welcome all of you to our workshop here today entitled Imaging the Sea Ranch Future, Connecting the Promise of the Past with an Evolving Future. The event is sponsored by the Vision Committee, which is an operations committee under the direction of our community manager, Frank Bell. This workshop is a continuation and follow-up to last fall's 50th birthday architectural forum. Having said that, it's now my pleasure to introduce one of the founding fathers of the Sea Ranch and a Sea Rancher of the Year in 2015. Please give a warm welcome to your guide and host for today, Donlyn.
At the very most, that needs to be founding brother. And there's another one, Richard Whitaker, who was also a part of the team that made first architecture here. Is this working? What I'm going to do today is, first, we've made careful plans about how things are going to work, and we've made careful plans about timing, which are already off. And they're off for a magnificent reason, which is that so many of you have turned up. And we're very, very excited that there is this kind of really engaged attention in what we're doing. The purpose really of this follow-up workshop, following on to the seminar forum, is to gather ideas and think about an agenda of things which would be more fully considered in another forum in the fall, and that would be considered with research and with preparation regarding issues that come out of the topics today. So this is not a session in which you'll be happy to hear that anything is going to get resolved. I guess you'll not be unfamiliar with that process. It is a session where we hope to have lots of really good engagement around a set of issues. I've made some comments about the workshop and what kinds of things it found, which you have received copies of. And also I went through the, first there was Jackie Bassett, where's Jackie? Really good article in the Bulletin which talked about the conversation that happened afterwards. And before that, Claire had done an article on the talks in soundings. But I went through the transcripts and just focused on the last paragraphs where I figured they'd probably be desperately saying what they really had to say. And I went through and picked out some of those, and which I thought actually were central to what they were meaning to say. And those also you have on the blue sheet, I guess. Right? And there are some, I think, some really useful observations and comments there that would be good for us to think about. So my job at the moment is to do a little bit of introductory business, a little introductory comments, and tell you what the outline of the afternoon is. I'm going to speak a little bit. Dick Whitaker, who's here as a founding brother and also as a longtime member of the design committee, is going to correct me a little bit and say a few words. That's a long tradition we have. Then we are focusing on the tables. And the tables each has a moderator at the present time. And their job is to keep the discussion rolling and to move us through a period of time, I think it's 40 minutes, not a lot, during which you are asked to first do an important thing, which is, before that table movement, a very important thing, which is to introduce yourselves. Each one of you in this room. It's going to take a little while. But what we want you to do, which is unusual, is not say, I'm Donlyn Lyndon from 741, or whatever it is that your lot number is, which is the normal identification. But we'd like you to speak about, introduce yourself, and with what organization or activity or bond you have with something bigger in the community. With either things you do for the Sea Ranch, or things you do for the coast, or things you do for arts, or etc. And we'd like to do that because one of the things we heard as a reaction after the forum is that the people who were making the comments had not enough exposure to the surrounding community. And one of the things the 50th anniversary has been celebrating and wanting to make a point of is our connection to the larger community. And so we figured that actually a good way of getting a map of that was to everyone to say what their primary connection or most interesting or the one they want to talk about. Not talk long, because it's going to take twice as long as we thought it was going to. Is that understandable? Then you will start having discussion about the ideas that have come up in my discussion, and about particularly the set of questions that's on your table as well. And those are under three categories. One is what are we likely to experience in the future? What are we likely to see? What's the future likely to include? Might include. I'm absolutely opposed to people who think they know exactly what the future is going to hold. The second question is, are there things that are presently in our way of being and organizing ourselves that are blocking fulfillment of what those other things might become? And then third, what about changes in the larger context? It's not just changes in what we do here that affects what we do here, as we all know. I mean, like the net, just think about it for a minute. That's something which has affected everybody far beyond what the CCNRs provide. So, so you discuss those things, you write things down on the paper there. And if you're inspired to, you make diagrams or arrows from one to another, or make it right there on that table. And at the very end, either the person who's moderating or someone else from the group will bring that. Two people will come up. One will hold that a paper in their hand, and the other will say what happened in 3 minutes. Before that, however, those moderators will have guidance because there will be a break. You'll be glad to know there's a break. And during the break, you get to talk to other people and do whatever you do in a break, and use that red, yellow, and green sticker that you have to put down a green one on an idea that's really great, a yellow one which you think is worth considering, and a red one on something you're concerned about. So, Is that clear?
And you guys do that at all the tables?
At all the tables, yes, right. So you mill around and discuss and then put it down where you think, and then the moderator who's reporting out at the end says, well, actually this idea was pretty good. It got 18 reds. Pretty good, and it was pretty provocative, right? Green is good. Sorry, I got mixed up myself on that. We may not have an infallible system here. All right. The title, Connecting the Promise of the Past with an Evolving Future, is chosen to emphasize that in really, as several speakers said, that in moving forward with the Sea Ranch, it was really very important to recognize what it started out to be, to understand the kind of intentions that brought it together, and to move in relationship to those and understand those as a way of seeing where to go. It was interesting that the speakers, all 5 of them, spoke a lot about how important this project, the Sea Ranch, had been in architecture and planning circles, and how actually to these 5 people it had been an important personal revelation when they first saw publication of it or came to it. And many people had seen it, actually many professionals had told me, and they all said they'd seen it when they were students, and that was important to, had been important in shaping things. They also noted that it was called, in the first publications, it was called an ecological approach, which was a good summary. And it was also, Larry, they cited Larry's living lightly on the land. The speakers also, besides coming here and speaking, they actually had a tour the day before, which went the entire length of the Sea Ranch. And they visited, I don't remember, something like 5 or 6 or 7 houses, and some of them were staying in houses, so they had exposure to quite a bit. They all noted the pride and care that was expressed by people in this place. They also said, however, they thought there were places where it was a little dimmer than it had first started out to be. And they called for finding ways to reinforce the vitality of the place and its architecture and its landscape, recognizing how much the landscape, which is so central to what the Sea Ranch is about, has actually been going through changes. And that was something that needed to be dealt with. So that we needed to think about the future. One of the ways that I like to describe it, having now worked with the Commons Landscape Committee for 5 years, and many of you, it has become clear to me that one of the things we're doing as a community is that we're stewarding 10 miles of the California coast. It's a lot of it. And we're doing that in 2 ways. We're doing it as an association, which has a budget which takes care of landscape and takes care of us and takes care of many things. But it's fundamentally about keeping this place in shape. But it's half, the Commons is half of the land of the Sea Ranch. The other half is in all of your hands. So you are being stewards as well of a part of this coast, a part of this larger enterprise. And it's a kind of joint venture of a lot of individuals and the association that is being stewards for this place. So that's I think, an important perspective on what really is happening here. Let me just very quickly run through some slides. Starting with, and you've often seen the upper image before, starting with what Larry called his eco score, not echo. Very important diagram, which I didn't for years understand, and didn't kind of get into it enough to understand. But fundamentally, what it is a charting out over time of what has made this place. And the impressive thing about it is, we're off and running already. Why didn't you go back? What? Can you go back? The important thing about that is that this starts in ancient geological time and spirals out. And the time flow that has made this place, this reminds us, the time flow that has made this place includes us when we can see it. Anyway, in the bottom little strand of that diagram. It's our time on this place is here. And what we're doing is very important to what the place is like, but it's part of a very, very long process that has created this wonderful place. The landscape, the things that we put in it. And it's a stewarded landscape. It's been actually worked over by people since the Indians came. That's not so long ago either. The Native Americans, sorry. Oh, that's the one you said I shouldn't hit. Okay. Anyway, they didn't come so long ago either in terms of geological time. I better not get my lane going, or we'll be in trouble. So that's an important insight, I think, about the place, is that we are only a part of what's happening. The basic thing about everything is the conditions of the land. And that has been what actually inspired the very first thinking about the place. Thinking about the place, not just the geography, but also the idea of it as a long space with great hedgerows and rooms that were marked out. And then Larry made a diagram you've often seen, and I think it's a constant reference, which he called the locational score. And that diagram is really meant to indicate what are the intentions of it. So it talks about keeping the coast open, it talks about the hedgerows, it talks about the kind of forest background, about keeping houses within that forest background, so the forest is what actually frames the back of the meadows, and the coastal bluff trail keeping open, and so on. The plan, as it's developed over now 50 years, has actually kept to that set of intentions. There are pieces of it that are different, that have been laid out differently than was first intended. On the bottom, it's quite small on the screen, but on the bottom, you see the actual landscape in an aerial photograph, and superimposed on that, if you can see it all, are the roads and the property lines. But the large part of it, half of that is commons and half of it is private. And you can see that that's it varied, as the pattern varied as it goes along. Larry also did a series, the original work included a series of diagrams that were speaking about how the sun and the wind were important to this place, and that the architecture and the planning, both the kind of landscape planning and the should follow what had been happening, which is that the landscape was shaped by the wind and then buffered by the hedgerows. And that then the buildings themselves should also help with shaping the wind. That they could reach for the sun and dip down into the wind and do various versions of that depending upon where they were. And up on the right are the earliest hedgerow demonstration houses designed by Joe Escher. And you can very faintly see the bushes being blown by the wind and then the roof that goes on beyond them. He also we all talked about, and he diagrammed these ideas about everything being clustered. And there would be like bigger clusters in the landscape, like the farms were, that were part of the heritage and tradition and what you went through to get up here. There used to be so many barns that you went by than there are now. They've all kind of disappeared. And it also is thought about three-dimensionally, the bluff, the ridge, and then the measuring out of those great rooms, and adding clusters to it, and making the buildings so that they would become things that could be seen together, not just as individualized things. Next. The first buildings built were the condominium one on the left, or rather, pardon me, the sequence is first the marker building. The little marker building out on the road, which was actually the first post office. And it was built first because you couldn't have a name, I'm told. I wasn't part of this, but I'm told this story. You couldn't have a name unless you had a post office. And so the community got a name and a postal zip code, and it was because of that little building, which then had, of course, a great, marvelous Sea Ranch graphic on it. That was built really first, but all at the same time as the condominium, which is on the left there. You've probably, most of you, have never seen it that way, because now it's like in the upper left corner, there's so many trees around there. There wasn't a tree in sight when that building was built. And then the third thing, and all done at the same time, was the store. The store is the first part of the lodge. The lodge was added about 6 or 7 years later. And then the hedgerow houses, which I showed you a minute ago, were built all at the same time. It was all one big thing of construction. And the hedgerow houses, you can see, are along on the right of this drawing, are along the hedgerow. They don't stay in it, they move out from it. As it happens, the hedgerow has now followed them out. But the idea was that they would have little gardens behind that would be protected from the wind by the roofs and the hedgerow. And then they would get other kinds of vegetation. And then this was the meadow, the first meadow, which we have called the Sea Ranch Meadow, as we've been naming things in the Commons Landscape Committee, because it was the iconic first idea that you had the meadow, that the coast was left open, that everyone had access to the coast. You looked across the meadow to the ocean, and then the next houses were on the other side up against Brigantine Hedgerow. That area also had, it's off the map here, the Moonraker Athletic Club, you can see in the upper left corner, was the first association thing built. And then also had, just below that, on the left upper, one of the barn houses built later, the Baker Barns, of which there are 17 splendid examples at the Sea Ranch. So those were the initial things. Here are some sketches of Joe Eschrick's. He actually had a notion of going down into the ground even more than happened. I guess that was before they started digging and found the water. Then there's also somebody's sketch, I'm not sure whose it is, of the store with the logo on it, and then Moonraker itself. Those were the initial things. Here are the hedgerow houses seen more completely. You can see what's their form, the way we were talking about, and with little adjustments for specific sites. And then there's Joe Eschrick's own house. And there you can see a good example of what was thought about how the building should be made, which is that they were responsive to their site. The windows were there not because of some pattern that somebody had as an idea about what a house was, but because they were transcriptions of looking out and looking and being in and having different kinds of outlook to the sky and out to the meadow and with a protected entrance. Next, that's here. All right. This is 1972. By this time, the condominium was built. There was the beginning of the condominium, of what's now called Condominium 2. The Sea Ranch store had been extended to become the Sea Ranch Lodge. Notice the hedgerows that were planted. That hedgerow that goes down the condominium was planted in a little before 1972. And then there's the hedgerow, the Black Point hedgerow, and the cluster house, the Escher demonstration house. And here's the condominium from Byler Point and its situation. This was the first building built and was received a lot of attention and was something that brought attention to the Sea Ranch. And it's a big structure, big in the land. It was intentionally big in the land. It was itself a cluster, so that it would be like the kind of tradition of the farm buildings. It actually was part of an extension. The initial plan called for condominiums all along that stretch. And the condominium 1, this is not working, condominium 1 was the farthest to the left below. Actually, it's an earlier version. No, that's the final version of condominium 1, yeah. But those didn't happen for a variety of reasons, not all of which are clear because I can't be clear about why they didn't continue with our plan. But I mean, I can't conceptually grasp it. But it was partly that it was more investment than they were willing to make at that point because they had made a lot of investment in the overall landscape. And partly that people were not very clear about what condominiums were. Next. All right, there are the hedgerow houses and then the walk along the bluff in Black Point. All these different conditions that are the Sea Ranch, the forest, views from the forest out down to the meadows and beyond. Houses, this is the first individual house built in the Sea Ranch by Reverdy Johnson, designed by Mary Turnbull. And it was settling on the edge of the forest, a little sort of place of its own. A very simple, modest building, but very vernacular on the outside and very richly configured inside. And that was part of the thinking all along, is that you became part of the larger landscape, part of the larger enterprise, but you had very vivid interiors that would be yours to enjoy. And here's, towards the end of the period of development, is the house designed by Buzz Udell, for Larry Howard. And it's a really good example of what's going on. Of what this was done, his own initial house burned down, and this was built, I've forgotten the date, but maybe 12 years ago. But it's a wonderful example of walking in the door, confronting a piece of nature that's now become part of a structure that is making the place, and that's all a kind of incident of engagement. And then there's the view into that glorious coast, which you can't quite see, but there's a cove there that's wonderful. On the left, in the balcony. And on the right is a greenhouse, where they have all their meals. And in the sun and out there as well. So it's those differing conditions that are magnified and are important to the tradition. All right, there's a lot of Sea Ranch. There's a lot of different conditions. I can't possibly show you them all. But there's a lot of stewarding taking place as well, and including the works, all the works of the association, and including the Commons landscape. We've been actually looking at these kinds of factors as we think about how to take care of the landscape. There are things like the hedgerow rehabilitation. The hedgerows are coming to the end of their lives, so new ones are being planted, and those are being done with a lot of stewardship help from people in the neighborhood. There is the wonderful stewardship program that the Commons Landscape Committee has, which involves people going out and digging up stuff and carrying it around and having a good time and having a barbecue, not a barbecue, but a picnic afterward, and waiting for the next time. It's a fabulous program, and people have, it's done a lot to help the place, and it's spoken of with great fondness by the people who participate. So there are the trails. Of course, the Trails Committee is not ever to be less than glorified. They take care of so much in this place, and it makes so many things possible. There are various buildings that are clustered against the forest, for instance, here in the landscape. And then here, I'm showing just once again that map of the overall, half of it commons and the rest in private ownership. And two examples of buildings that sit on the edge of the commons landscape and help to shape it, help to give form to it, while still taking care of their little piece themselves. I think that's a hugely important part of the process. So, with those remarks, let me say that what we'd like you to do is first, as I said, do that introduction, and be as quick with it as you can, but still profound. And then we will move into a discussion of the topics that we've suggested. And I will stop now. I won't read those now. I'll wait until after the introductions. Where are we going to start? Kay. I didn't even tell her I was going to do that.
I'm Kay Barton. I'm chairing the planning committee, and we're very much involved in many of the issues that Donlyn has mentioned, particularly in terms of preservation of the cultural landscape and our heritage. We're involved very much in inventorying and preserving our biotic resources, and we also get into the area of energy development and more resourceful utilization of some of our biomass resources.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can we speak louder for the people in the back? Thanks.
Can you move the microphone?
I don't know whether this. I don't think we have a roving microphone, do we? This one seems to be tied in.
Speak loud.
All right. So yeah, shout, please, shout out.
Mark Olson. I'm just been here 2 years. Weekender. Will be my future full-time home someday. We'll be here all the time.
Okay.
I've just been eyeing Sea Ranch since 1987. So finally got here.
All right. Great.
I'm Robert Scarola. I'm on the board of directors, but I'm also interested in a lot of other things like biomass and how we utilize it and what's happening with the GRI lands up above us, which are very important to the overall ecology. And I also, in my spare time, I write poetry, which you'll see in Soundings. And I participate in the larger community here, the regional community, by being involved with some of the organizations that are doing things in Guala. I send a lot of photographs to Gene Jackson and celebrate the coast, the whole coast, which I think we're significantly a part of. And if we don't recognize that, then yes, I'm very dedicated to what's happening at Sea Ranch, but also we are part of the flora and fauna and the whole general feel of this coast.
Great, Rob.
I could go on, but also,
I know you would. That's why I couldn't say how great it was. Nancy.
I think Robert just took my time. I'm Nancy Scarola. I think what I treasure the most about Sea Ranch is that it's a community where we can govern ourselves because we have a vision and a spirit that made it possible for us to define how we want to be together. The other thing I really care about is working on the landscape here and helping figure out what we're going to do with all these trees in the future. I'm on the hedgerow subcommittee. I'm actually the chair of that committee, and we're going to be bringing you a forum in May about what our findings
okay, yes.
I'm Charlie Wilson. I volunteer pulling weeds once in a while for the CLC.
A noble effort, yes.
Lee Mueller. I'm currently chair of the Sea Ranch Forum Committee, past board member. The Forum Committee brings subjects of interest and concern to sea ranchers the first Saturday of the month. This is not our forum, but if they hadn't done it, I'd like to think we would have.
I'm Drew McCauley. I'm a member of the Sea Ranch Board of Directors. I also volunteer with RCMS on several of their committees and drive people to medical appointments for CRC, which needs drivers, by the way.
I'm Marilyn Green. I'm beach coordinator for Sea Ranch. I'm a member of we just changed the name of it. It used to be California Coastal National Monument Stewardship Task Force. It is now Coastal Stewardship Task Force. We changed that this week. I'm also that really strange little lady that you see taking pictures on Pebble Beach all the time. If you walk on the bluff, you've probably seen me. And I respond to dead sea mammals.
Great. Jackie Bass.
I'm Jackie Bass, and I'm running for the board, so. And I organized the architectural forum last fall with Donlyn and Peter and others who did most of the work.
Louder, Jackie.
Yeah, but I have a question, which others may have too. You've talked here about the landscape and architecture, cultural resources. None of our questions have anything to do with that at all. So you say today is preparatory to a larger forum in the fall. What you're trying to do is to bring in issues that will affect how the landscape.
Yes, right, and
architecture. Is that the purpose?
And to bring in things that we didn't necessarily have on the agenda before. But it does not mean don't talk about architecture. We want people to do that. Okay.
Well, you couldn't guess it from this list, so I just wanted to
one of the things we're looking to this group to do is to tell us what we didn't have on the list. So thank you. First time I've ever been told that I didn't have architecture on the list. Yes.
Oh, I'm John Simpson, and I'm very new to the area, 5 years, and I transplanted from Southern California, from Irvine, which was also a planned community, somewhat different, but a planned community. And I'm little by little getting involved in various things. Number one, my Rotary in Walla.
Okay, great.
I'm Margie Rosshold. My late husband and I bought a lot the first day we drove through here. That was 37 years ago. I was fortunate enough to be the second house to build after the moratorium collapsed. So that was 1981. And I've lived here since 1985, and I just feel very blessed. This is the most wonderful place. I've traveled all over the world, and this is it. Let's preserve it.
My name is Paul Mundy. I'm new, purchased my home a year and a half ago. I've been told it's the home that has the least footprint. It's built on 17 poles, and I'm happy to be the steward of that home. My aunt had a house here in the 70s, 60s, 69 to 82. Spent a lot of time in the 70s here as a kid, and forgot about it, drove through the area and went, I'm coming back, so I'm here.
I'm Cecilia Melcher. I'm also on the board of directors.
Louder, Cecilia.
Pardon?
Louder.
Louder. Okay. I came here 20 years ago, this coming April, from the San Fernando Valley. And I'm happy to be here. And my kids keep saying, when are you leaving? And I say, never. So I've been 17 years a volunteer at the Dolphin with Walla Arts. And my most interesting hobby is to watch architecture and watch the real estate market.
I'm Paul Fishman. My wife and I have been here for 2 years. We came from the east, living mostly in unplanned places, so this was a bit of a change. First learned about Sea Ranch as a city planning student way back east in the late 60s. The planners didn't have much to say about Sea Ranch, but the architects did. Mary and I both volunteer at the Walla Arts Center. We are very proficient staplers. We do other things.
Well, the Commons Landscape Committee needs some staplers. Next report's coming up soon, yes.
I'm Mary Fishman. He's really said it all about me too. I think I most enjoy here working in the Posh Squash community garden
Posh Squash is coming up, right?
and being a seal docent, which will
And seal
start up
docent.
again in a
Good.
couple of
Great.
weeks.
Great. Bert, you can't possibly list all the things you do.
My name is Bert Perkins. I'm a number of committees and subcommittees up here. And like Margie, we started our house back before the moratorium. You folks think you have it tough now. The Coastal Commission is really tough. But we've been here nearly 40 years. My wife is at another table. I asked that we split up.
Fiona?
I'm Fiona O'Neill, I'm an architect. I've been practicing architecture up here for 30 years. And I live on Sea Ranch. I'm a horse rider. I love riding through the landscape. The place is very important to me personally and professionally.
Ellen Eastman. My thing is helping people like Cecilia and Dot Porter and everybody else who want to die here, help them so that that can happen.
Hi, I'm supposed to get up for both of us. Mark and Debbie Cal. We've been here less than 2 years. Mark is with RCMS, and I do Posh Squash and Guala Arts when I'm here, which is 10% of the time. I'm working on getting our other house ready to sell because we've decided to stay.
Yay!
My name is Harold Snook. I've been up here over 20 years. We were in the garden when we first came up here, the squash garden, I guess it's called. And I kind of take care of our street. We live on Greenvale Close. Most of the homes are second homes. I got keys to several of them. And they call me and I go see what I can do for them.
Yeah.
Next.
I'm just lucky to be married to the caretaker of this whole thing. He takes good care of me, too.
Hi, I'm Mike Beatty. We are part-timers living in San Francisco. We come up here as often as we can. We're trying to get more involved. One of the things we do is, with the community, is we open up our Binker Barn to an artist colony 3 or 4 times a year that our daughter runs, and that way we're getting to meet a lot of very interesting people, and it's super.
I've taken advantage of that. It's very nice.
I'm Jackie Bresnahan, Michael's wife, and I just want to, we're moving into Guala Arts with the vocal performance and classical music performances. The first Guala Arts performance is going to be on Monday of Memorial Day weekend at 1 o'clock, and so we'd love to have you all come.
My name is Peter Jenny. My partner and I have lived on the Sea Ranch for 10 years full-time. I'm a member of the Vision Committee and the Archives Committee, as well as being the District 5 Landmarks Commission for Sonoma County, which gives me the opportunity to wander around the western half of the county and meet people and talk about, things that are going on and trying to get people interested in conserving the barns and things along the coast that are falling down. Kind of sharing the things I've learned here.
I'm going to skip over to, so we don't miss them. Scott, do you want to? Yes, and model speaking loudly and quickly.
Okay. I'm Scott Smith. I first slept on the Sea Ranch in a sleeping bag in my car in 1974. I'm a Sea Rancher. I do what Sea Ranchers do.
I'm Andrea Lunsford. I grew up in Tennessee. I'd never been west of the Mississippi River when I first came. out to the West Coast and thought, I'm never leaving here. I'm a member with Peter on the Vision Committee and work a lot at Walla Arts and do everything I can to be here as often as I can.
Excuse me, I'm Christine Frost. My husband and I got married here 20 years ago, fell in love with the place, purchased about 10 years ago, and unfortunately part-timers, not unfortunately or unfortunately, and when we retire, we'll be part of the greater organizations.
Right.
And I'm Rick Frost, and I'll just add to that saying we're looking forward to the next 30 years, which is why we're here and want to help to shape the future.
I'm Scott Thomas, a weekender. I wanted to bring to your attention that I have read that California has recently enacted legislation that creates the legal framework for community solar share. Instead of having individual solar panels on your roofs, there would be a central community solar facility to which people could subscribe and uncouple from PG&E, and that might be something as part of the future to explore.
Good, thank you.
I'm Barbara Rice, and I first came up here in February of 1975, rented a house with my husband David, and we fell in love instantly and kept renting over the years. We're lot owners, we're not lot owners, and in 2008 we bought a house and moved here full time. David has become an EMT. He isn't here because he went on 2 ambulance runs yesterday and he's tired. I am the native plant lady, I guess. I've been involved in all things native plant here. The committee, the planning committee's biotic resource committee, trying to conserve our rare plants here, and also with the broader community, the local chapter of the California Native Plant Society and their efforts at the Lighthouse, and north of here all the way up to Elk.
Thank you.
I'm John Yule, and Brad and I very recently just bought a place up above the White Barn in June. This is apart from the architectural forum last fall. This is our first community meeting. We're looking for ways to get involved. We mostly love the trails here. We love being here.
Ditto.
Marty.
I'm Marty Campbell. I have been a part-time sea rancher for 25 years. I've been active in governance. I've served on the board several times, and like Jackie Boss, I'm running for the board again this time. I've also served on the Finance Committee, the Forum Committee, and a series of ad hoc committees over time. And I love the Sea Ranch and love the founding concepts.
I'm Jim Nybach, and I'm also on the board of directors, which, as you might guess, puts me in meetings a lot of the time. But one of the best things we think about the Sea Ranch is the outdoors, the wildlife, the nature part of it. So that's what we try to do whenever we can. Trails, posh squash, native plant garden, what have you. So we love the Sea Ranch.
I'm Dibby Tyler. I'm a former board member and a member of several committees now. I'm one of those people called PIPs, and Frank Bell can tell you what that means.
Yes?
Okay. I'm Paul. I'm an engineer. I have lived in 7 different countries the last 45 years, but the last 10 years this has been my winter stopover. And I have been on the utility committee to build the new water tank. So we have 1 million gallons of water to ensure that any fire can be turned out, and also to ensure that any seismic event will not damage the water tank. So you can sleep at night quietly.
I'm Hannah Disberg. I live and work here full time. I'm on the Vision Committee. I'm on the 50th birthday committee, and I'm out hiking for at least an hour each day. At least that's my goal.
I'm Monty Anderson. I'm an architect with a background in historic preservation. My wife and I bought a house up on Moonraker in 1967, classic house up there, and we're working on trying to spend as much time up here as possible.
I'm Megan Ballou, Monty's wife. I've been coming up here since 1971 when I was 2 years old. So I've grown up alongside the Sea Ranch, and we just bought a year ago. So we're pretty new members, but we already accomplished our 50 hiking challenge. And so I enjoy as much the natural environment as everyone else here, but I'm really here for the buildings.
I'm Alan Dreyfus. I'm an architect. I guess I'm an embryonic Sea Ranch member. I'm about to become an owner of one of the walking cabins.
Lisa?
I'm Lisa Dundee. I'm also an architect. We're all gathered in the back of the room. I'm your director of design review for the association, but my strongest connection that I'm most passionate about with the greater community is I'm the co-founder and standing president of your Humane Society.
Nancy?
I'm Nancy Carter. I've been a Sea Ranch member since 1969. I finally moved up here full-time in 2003 after having one of the other gentlemen lived all over the world. I've been very active since that time in almost everything that Sea Ranch has to offer, and currently I'm the secretary of the CLC, the Commons Landscape Committee. And I'm chairing the Candidates Forum on April 4th, and I would like to make sure that you all come and meet your candidates, because this is a vital election where we have to have a quorum of lots who participate, even though we have fewer candidates than normal, so keep that.
Jim Docker, designer builder. Been here for over 20 years, and we see ourselves as assisting sea ranchers making their dreams come true. I discovered the sea, well, you know what they say about the 60s. If you can remember it, you weren't there. Well, I discovered the Sea Ranch in maybe 65 or 66, one of those being things, with Lawrence and Anna Halprin at San Francisco State, and was hooked. But it took a while to get here. But we've been here for over 20 years now.
Oh, no.
I'm Dick Lotspeech. This is my wife Val Free. We from the Bay Area. We're part-time up here, and we were able to, when we were able to buy a house about 9 years ago, we bought here because when Val was in college in the early 70s, one of her friends, their parents owned one of the original meadow houses over there, and she was completely taken and fascinated by the philosophy and the concept. So we still, that's why we're here.
Where do we go next?
I'm Don Campbell. I'm currently a member of the Planning Committee.
I'm Kim Park. I bought a bigger barn back in '94, and I love it, so I feel really historical. I currently work with the design department with Lisa and Craven and the gang, and I love that, and I get to meet all of you nice people, and I learn a lot about architecture and building and stuff, so it's really fun. And I also am on the Humane Society, and so if you are considering getting a cat or a dog or anything, please see me or Lisa. We've got them for you. Thanks.
I'm Janet McKinnon. I've been here since '88, which is about 25 years ago. I'm an architect. I'm with the CLC and currently active with the stewardship projects with PERC. So responsible for those info alerts every month that come out and get out and do some stewardship projects. So I love the place.
I'm Suki Shepherd. I actually heard about Sea Ranch.
I
heard about Sea Ranch in the late '60s in Boston from this man, Donlyn, and knew I would be here. And I managed to buy a lot 12 years ago and build 4 years ago. So I'm here. Mostly, I pick up debris on the beach and rescue mammals, and I'm doing some tutoring, surveying the beach.
Michelle Shabady, I'm on your board of directors, member of the Commons Landscape Committee, and I have my Four-Eyed Frog t-shirt on today, and I'm a customer of Four-Eyed Frog.
I'm Jean Nolan, and I found Sea Ranch during the early 60s when it first began. I just moved from Minnesota, when I heard that California didn't have either mosquitoes or snow. So I've loved it here ever since. I just bought my house 16 years ago, but I'm a full-timer now.
I'm Mike Lane, and my community involvement has included getting a son with special needs through 4 years at Point Arena High School when they did not have a program for an individual with his particular needs. Also, I'm a geologist and a map maker, and in one capacity or another, I've worked with several local organizations, Action Network, Chamber of Commerce, Friends of the Wallala River, and others. And one of my favorite community activities, though, has nothing to do with geology or map making. It's bagging used cat litter for the Humane Society.
I'm Tom Fleischman. My family has been coming here since '84. We got hooked the first time we were here and have been renting homes for 25 years. And 5 years ago, finally bought a house, which we are very proud of and have shared with many guests and friends and relatives. Have walked the trails for countless hours and taking thousands of pictures. And it is an incredible place.
I'm Sharon Albert. I'm on the Vision Committee. I've been involved with the 50th anniversary also. And like everyone here, I love Sea Ranch and I love the bigger community too. And because of that, I'm on the Lighthouse Board, and I'm the founder and moderator of Mendonoma Listserv, which serves the entire community.
I'm David Parrish. I'm a homeowner for 3 months now. So I'm here mostly to learn about the community.
My name is Malay Thacker. We bought a lot here 15 years ago. We moved to a brand new house that David built for us last year, so we're just getting established in the community.
I'm Beverly Thacker, Renee's wife, and as I said, we've only been here 6 months. We're really getting to know the place, really to know the trails, definitely, wildlife arts, things like that. So we're good. Happy to be here.
I'm Joyce Perkins, been here for years, permanent 5 years. I have a horse, spend most of my time riding and enjoying our lovely trails. I also love Project Santa.
I'm Bob Yeager. We've had a house here since the early 90s. My wife, Judy, is on the Trails Committee. She's kind of the chief cookie maker, I think. And we still have another home in Oakland. I have an old Alfa Romeo you may have seen me in. It seems to know the way up here almost automatically. So that's what we do. We drive up here and have great weekends and spend time here. Very passionate about the sustainability of the Sea Ranch and hope that these meetings can develop ideas about how we can keep it as much as the way it is and still grow as we need to.
I'm Sandy Rolifson, and my late husband and I bought our first house here at the Sea Ranch 15 years ago. I can't believe it. I'm a part-timer. I've been a part-timer for 15 years. I live in Marin County. An interesting aside is that in 1972, I was very heavily involved in a campaign to pass Proposition 20. Maybe some of you recall that. It was the proposition that established the Coastal Commission. And I had no idea that eventually I'd be owning a property on the coast. But at any rate, I want to thank all of you who are so heavily involved in the community and give your time, your resources. I benefit from it. I don't contribute in any meaningful way, but I'm very grateful. Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Andre. I'm a full-time sea rancher. I'm on the Vision Committee and head of communications for the birthday committee. And if anyone in this room doesn't know there's a birthday going on, I'm going to shoot myself. But I think I was actually invited here because I'm the board chair of Coastal Seniors, which does Meals on Wheels, among other things. And I'm on the Coastal Life Support District Board.
Great. So, David?
David Hilmer, I'm a local contractor. I've built or worked on many of your homes. So I make my living here. I live here. Yeah, yes. Make my living here, raise my kids here, my 2 dogs. Heavily involved. Obviously, I care a lot about the buildings. Love the tennis courts. And I just want to tell you all, deferred maintenance is the biggest enemy of your homes.
David Ford, much to my dismay, I'm a part-timer. I live in Sacramento, and when I'm not here, what I do is evangelize on behalf of the Sea Ranch. I'm stunned at how many 30 and 40-year-olds give me a total blank stare when I say something about the Sea Ranch. And personally, I think that's a problem for us. And so I try to promote the Sea Ranch and what a great place we have, and encourage them to come see us, even though I hate crowds. So.
I'm Lynn Kennedy. I'm David's wife. We participate, or I participate in the Walla Arts Center from time to time with classes. We are avid hikers. We're hiking all over the place. And the other activity that I think we've been involved in pretty regularly in 2 locations in the Sea Ranch are block parties. We're all about block parties.
I'm Teresa Ewan. I'm an architect, retired. So I've been aware of Sea Ranch ever since it started. And I was at UC Santa Cruz when I worked with Bill Turnbull, one of their brothers. And so when we came up, finally made it up here in 1972, we went ahead and bought one of the clusters. So, and when I told Bill Turnbull about it, he told me, he fell off of his stool. My husband and I now come here as often as we can, and even though we never lived here, we've been aware of Sea Ranch all along, and enjoy it too.
The stool he almost fell off of was probably the one he was sitting on when he drew your home.
I'm Lou Summers. We moved here in the 80s sometime, left a few years, and have recently moved back. David's added a bedroom to a nasherick, with Donlyn's guidance or vice versa, I'm not sure. Anyway, the most useful thing I could do for the ranch, and would like to, is to make maps of what's you might call the archaeology or the buried historic record, whether it be foundations or footings or even septic lines, I suppose. But we're good at making maps of what's underground, and I think that's the one thing I could do. Elizabeth, my wife, is an artist, and she's been here even longer as a child, but she's not here today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Moore. First came to Sea Ranch with my great-grandmother in '67. Moved up full-time 2 years ago. I write music, and that means that I spend most of my time studying music, and these days my most important teachers are the architects, the builders, and the landscape of Sea Ranch.
I'm Laura Martinez, and my husband David and I have an architecture design business here. We live here full-time, been here 3 years. That's sort of the professional part. We have a very strong interest and investment in the community. But on a personal level, I was lucky enough to spend a lot of formative years living about a quarter mile from Point Lobos in Carmel Highlands. And it was just a wonderful part of my life. We literally, ran up and down the canyon and spent our weekends on the beach. That was our backyard. And then I was maybe not so lucky to live in the Central Valley for about 20 years. And the whole time I was there, I was like, I'm getting back to the coast. I'm getting back to the coast. And then lived in the Bay Area for a long time. But anyway, when David and I met and started coming up to Sea Ranch, I said, this is it. I'm home again. This is phenomenal. And so I'm very interested and invested in preserving the fact that we can run down to the beach anytime and go out on these trails and just enjoy this nature. It's just phenomenal, and we're very lucky to get to experience that. And I'm also very interested in the sustainability of the community and living here as we all age, and as we face the challenges of having a sustainable community that works for us in practical ways as well. So that's kind of what you talk about business.
We end with another David.
Yeah, okay, so I'm another David, and I'm another architect. It used to be saying that, I think it's before the downturn, that if you threw a rock at Sea Ranch, you'd hit a contractor, and if you missed, you'd hit an architect. Today in this room, if you throw a rock, you will hit an architect. I'm the son of sea ranchers. My career started with the Sea Ranch house for my parents when I was still in school, and it appears to be ending here as I practice architecture here, and we have an office in Wallala, and I sit underneath David's feet, but there's a floor. Yeah, in many ways. But I'm sure David would say this. I would like to make a plug not to forget Wallala. We are married to Wallala. Without them, we don't exist, and vice versa. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in here as we talk about the Sea Ranch. We are not alone, and nor are they. So, I love having a foot in that community, which I didn't feel I had before I started really working and being a part of that business community there. So.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, I live in the community too. My name is Walt Custer. Nancy and I moved here in about 1999, and I work full time, and having good internet access allows us to live here, and I welcome the better internet access coming. I was part of the ill-fated MatBot effort 10 or 15 years ago, but I don't think the community was ready for that then. We're amateur nature photographers. Tomorrow we're heading to India to go chase tigers, but we love Sea Ranch, and we love being able to live here and work here electronically.
Well, that's great. There's one of the persons just come in. People are describing, saying who they are, and then saying what their primary connection with the Sea Ranch community is. Yep.
I live here part-time as a second home with Sandy Wolfson, who's up in front there. And she was taking copious notes for me since I missed part of the meeting. And I'm going to sure get a briefing from her afterwards.
Okay, great. Well, there is one other person. Yes. That was my phrase. Which is Dick Whitaker, Richard Whitaker. Right here. And so now, since you didn't interrupt me, you now get the floor. Right. But not for long. No. Actually, I will assure you all that we're actually at this point only 8 minutes late. And we started much more than 8 minutes late, so we're doing pretty well.
This is a commercial. I'm Dick Whitaker. I've been here before the Sea Ranch, as well as since it started. And I'm very pleased that I had that opportunity and to do it. You reminded me about the Coastal Commission. One of my very close friends, in fact, we were building a house with them at the time. She joined the opposition, as far as I was concerned, and voted with the association not to allow the Coastal Commission to have their 5 parking places here and have access to the thing. I thought it was quite unique and very kind of amusing that the county just then said, well, that's fine. We just won't issue any more building permits. We didn't speak to one another for probably about a year after that happened, which was kind of sad. But I did mention commercial, and I do want to say a few things about what the design committee has been thinking about for quite a while now. First of all, about the environment. The concept is really very simple. It's everything, nothing more, nothing less. And it's never the environment. It's not static. It's different at different times. And it includes the land, growing things, people, weather, exciting things, dull things, and especially time. It's a 4-dimensional universe. Now this is very important because it has to do a lot with what we do on the design committee, trying to outguess the future of the place in terms of, well, lots of things. The most important aspects of the development Sea Ranch plan, kind of from the beginning, were the idea that you can't separate the buildings from the environment or the environment from the buildings. You have to understand the relationship of the parts to the whole and how to integrate them. It had to do with direct personal experience and thinking in 3 dimensions. And 4, the process is interactive. Now these things we still believe in, actually. So I hope, you know, everybody will continue if they haven't joined into that now. Architecture is part of this too. A house is first of all an act, not an object. Louis Sullivan said that back before the turn of the last century. The least important aspects of a house are the objective elements. The most important things, in a holistic sense, a house should be an experiential matrix that enriches our lives. The experience of going from one place to another and have the feeling that you've actually gone somewhere. A bay window that allows you to both be inside and outside at the same time. A high window and a stair that takes you up far beyond the 2nd floor into the trees beyond. A magic beam of light that plays with the shape of the room. All of these things have to do with contributing to the art of living. Building a house at the Sea Ranch requires a commitment to the place, its traditions, as well as an understanding that you're part of a larger community beyond your lot lines. This is more critical now that virtually every building site is an infill site. And the site planning relative to views and privacy and the fit with existing neighborhoods is much more complex and much more important now. That's the message from the design committee. Thank you.
That's a good launch to the future. A couple of things that we had thought.
John?
Yes?
I forgot one very important thing.
Oh.
See this? I just saw this today. It's about seals and seal pups. The place set aside for that to take place. I think probably what we ought to do as a design committee is make some signs up with the appropriate kind of warnings on them to post on every unbuilt site so that we could somehow get people to really realize that we're serious about dealing with having people really contribute to and adding to the character of our environment. Because somehow a lot of people now think, well, that was history. We're doing something else now, which is not true.
That's a great point.
So, Donlyn, I just want to make sure we introduce Craven over there.
I was so
Did you slip past me?
It's
hiding over here.
She's part of our landscape.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm Craven Alcott. I'm a landscape architect. I work for the design department with Lisa. I'm a past board member of the Humane Society. Everybody in here deserves a dog or a cat. Humane Society, the best ones on the coast. I'm also a member of Posh Posh, and I'm a strawberry mother. That's just another thing I do. I love the Sea Ranch. I have since we first laid eyes on it in the 80s, and we have been here now for 10 years full time.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much. The couple things we wanted to have this session show, and it did, is the kind of a variety of ways. Halpern actually, in one of his books, his programs, is called Taking Part. And one of the things that I think this has shown is how many different ways there are of taking part in this community and how extensive that community is and the opportunities. So that's come out very nicely. Another thing which we had in mind, and we're actually at one point going to ask people to do something about, is to give a sense of the kind of generational content of the Sea Ranch. And it's come out over and over again. People who are great-grandchildren of people who were here and are deeply committed still, and various stages of that kind of engagement. So it's actually, one of the things we think is interesting is the whole question of people growing up here, and not only growing up from children's, but as growing up as adults, and the kind of influence that it has and can have on how we actually see the world. So, let's meet the future. We wanted to think about how to explore various options, and there were some suggestions from the panel, for instance, about doing a program of experimental houses, and so on. What we want to do now is to turn to your tables. We're first going to have each of you who was at the forum say what your take-home message was, but I think we'll pass that. You can work it in as we go along, but rather than take time for that. That what we want you to do, if you would, is to have a really good discussion among yourselves about what you think are the things that we need to be thinking about and anticipating as we look at the future. So we're asking you to write down on that table what changes you think we might see, how those can benefit the Sea Ranch community, what factors are there in our arrangements or in society that block fulfillment now, and third, what is the influence of the factors outside our community on how it is that what might be changing in the larger community, which is going to change how we are able to be and work together. So we have about 30 minutes for that, and then we will have a break for you to put down, have further discussions and put down your dots. And so please go to it, and at some point we'll start saying you got to stop wind up pretty soon. Oh, let's see. One second.
Remember what he said about having some kind of where on some of these 400 miles have some, there might even be what's the next 50 years concept of building on, not discarding, but building on our original concepts.
Okay, what's the concept, the architectural concept?
What's the
new?
The next 50-year paradigm of Sea Ranch architecture.
I like the idea of an architectural contest.
Yeah, right.
Just make your kid.
I'm glad this is the thing that's been rattling around in my head ever since the morning.
Okay.
This guy's, I thought, wow, that's interesting. Because we tend to think of the Sea Ranch style something that is at one point in time, and
How are we going to get people? It's a little more selfish than that, to be honest.
Well, I can tell you, I've seen a change in demographic. I mean, just in the last 2 years, I actually have clients that are my age. And now, one problem is I'm getting older, so I'm catching up. But there are people coming out, and when we get our fibers, they'll be able to come and work here. Right now, they can kind of come and work here. But a lot of my clients in my age group, they say, when fiber comes, I'm moving. So that brings up another thing, that we're going to have an increased full-time population, and what are the pros and cons of that? One of the cons is where do you buy it? And what you do is the commercial district of Sea Ranch would haven't been developed as such.
You know, especially students up here for regular architecture forums, and there's some that you should see in that sense, and nobody's seen where we more organized and stuff, so not just
the rest of the community can't come here. And I think that's a real wall that the reason I started was to break that down in a virtual way. But to me, it would be nice to have something that gathering stuff where we could invite and include other people. Well, I also, that was one thing that Donna, the architects, everybody wants to see what we have something yeah, and it should, and we are really
It's almost like town and gown, where you find a meeting of the town.
Is there a lot of
Oh, yeah, easy to play, that's it.
Thousand Annapolis, that office complex, basically, you know what, I don't know, you have your ear to that
Well,
real estate market, you know what's going on?
basically, the kids inherited it and they kind of abandoned it. And they were dealing with an underground oil tank. I think Frank Bell is either trying to condemn it or get somebody to deal with it. So, we might work on that. Yeah, and it was there, and then it's kind of...
Quite a vital little complex.
Well, and I think Two-Fish proved that they could make a town center in a place that's not like a center of town necessarily. Because I thought they were nuts when they opened up there. Who's ever going to find Two-Fish? They opened an office next to them because people do find Two-Fish.
Now we're really aggravated at the number of days they're closed.
Demographics, I have noticed that the people I actually buying are in general younger than when I started here 15 years ago. Younger families, some families with young children. Great. It will also just change how many people we have to act with in general because they're not going to have much time. They want their kids to go bicycling and swimming and things, so they don't have as much time. But we are not a senior community as was perceived to be.
You know, I noticed that in my meanderings around looking at the other sites, I see a lot more younger couples in their 40s, a little younger. Well, just like you said, I'm a swimmer, so I swim at the pool on the weekends. With young families, which is terrific. Whether they can afford to buy here.
No, I think most of them buy.
Maybe.
If my neighbors were down. I was so like this.
They were asking, what are you a part of? I feel like I'm a part of our group, you know, a little close, or our sister sources, and we're really connecting together.
We get out and walk the dogs.
Yeah.
Come on. All about being, I mean,
Well, yeah, but these are professional musicians.
I do say, as you're kind of with South Entertainment,
You know, you have houses that sit empty.
went the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We could open up, like, it's got the middle architects, architects, or
There is, and I rented everywhere.
you know, that I think it's a great idea to like, try to cross-disciplinary things, you know, so the artists are talking to the
This
scientists.
is the first time that not that I'm here because I'm a part-timer, but I have heard of somebody expressing this division and that you feel like, you know, even just, I've never heard this.
Because the whole concept of this place is that everybody's sharing the commons. I mean, this is like, it's all shared, right? You know, you have your own little houses, but then everything is shared. It's a great psychological sort of, you know, yeah. Right. Right, yeah, that's exactly right. So it's a
Well, this kind of gets what
it's all
They can get a 20% raise, right? I believe. And then my third item,
maybe you would Jackie? Yes, Cecilia.
Fractured and agency responses and maybe fracturing the flipping.
Oh, I think that has to do with the county. Oh, don't you? I don't think, I mean, I don't, yeah, I'm sure it's, you have to.
then my last item is on the last page, the fifth one down. New forms of transport and access.
Yes, that was a big
The older I get, the closer I get to not driving. And even though there are systems up here for getting to town, like MTA is great, but just a shuttle from here to town. To the seniors, but and or some sort of a bridge attachment or a bridge so you can ride your bicycle. Or walk. There's that one gentleman that called Captain. I see him.
Well, the place is getting ready to fall down.
All right, I think it's time for us to declare the break. If I may have your attention for a minute, I want to remind you of what the break is about. Sharon, I wanted to remind people what the break is about. The break is about normal things that happen on a break, like catching your hair and that sort of stuff. But it's also please for you to take your dots, to walk around and look at all the tables, and to put down your favorite green dots with the concepts that you think are most important. Are we hearing, Craven? Craven? Are we hearing? So what you do now, we will convene again at 3:45. That gives you almost 15 minutes to break and to walk around and look at the tables, to look at the other tables and see which things you would want to give your green dot to for how it's really important, your yellow dot to so that you think it's okay, and your red dot to is something you're very concerned about. You don't need to use them all. And you do need to use the green ones, but not the red ones.
What I did was writing back, I enjoy writing something different. We're still in this 10-mile area.
Jackie.
On the helicopter joyride.
Did you go through it?
John Fiorenti to the rescue. What we're going to do now. John Fiorenti to the rescue. What we're going to do now, as soon as people stop talking, is start talking again. And so we're going to ask each table to report. And I've asked Jackie Bass to report first for her table with whoever is helping her with that. And what the proposal is maybe not all of you have, is that that you bring up, one person from the table brings up the chart and holds it, and the other person from the table speaks to what went on, and reports not only the ideas but also what the array of dots were. I should say that I had complaints from a number of people about the fact we only gave people one set of dots. And some people said they wish they'd have more green, and somebody said they wish they'd have more red. In any case, one thing I want to remind you, it's like traffic lights. Green is go, yellow is caution, red we think of as stop, but it's not stop in this case. And we put this down on the instructions, it's concerned, okay? It's not stop at any cost, it's really think carefully and be cautious about that, okay? So, with that proviso, let's have table whatever.
Okay, we will try to be fast. Paul is going to help me. I'm going to read the ones I wrote down, then we'll trade places and he'll read the ones.
And Craven is going to keep track of the greens over here.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the greens then, and I'll just the most green dots went to under change, aging in place. With this, and there are a couple of yellows there too, with suggestion that maybe the association by the transfer site and give us some planning time to do some sort of group living situation there, of cluster or condos. Bike path to Gualala got quite a bit of support from our group, or bike paths in general, and perhaps not just for bikes, for other maybe vehicles too. Golf carts were mentioned, but that got a strong positive. Landscape view restoration got a green. There was a lively conversation about a need for a community, for a place for members to meet, what I call red carpet club for Sea Ranch. And there was a thought that the association office, which is in woeful need of renovation and expansion, might include a members lounge where people could come, because that's staffed. And the sense was that we want a place where people know us, we feel at home, which the lodge, I guess, used to serve that function at the very beginning, but doesn't anymore. So that's it for the greens. For the yellows, here's the yellow, there was an interesting conversation about the need for more activities. Most people said there are already too many activities around this place, but there was a sense that it might be worth doing the questionnaire of the membership around this, because as people's children and grandchildren come, just to get some kind of sense of what the future might call for in terms of things to do here, because we have no idea, we're too old. Okay, there are a lot of individual things. There are a lot of reds around the privacy issue, and people were all over the place on privacy. And what came out of this was the need to first separate out the issues around privacy. What are we talking about here? And then secondly, to develop policies around each of these issues. Because right now planning programs around here can be a nightmare, as I well know, because there's everyone, somebody always says, what about privacy? But then some people care about privacy, but they may be talking about something else. So we really need to sort this one out and get a policy around it as we move into the future and as we become more integrated with our community. There's some other good stuff here too, but nothing with dots, so I'm not going to use it. Okay, Paul.
Okay, we also looked at aging, and we talked about that. Bike paths was great. A big one that really came up was fire and views, and that comes with restoration of views. Some of us have homes that when the house was built, the view is not there now. So how do you get those views back? And in that process, can we keep fire safe? Because fire is a huge problem and will be as the drought continues. Population, looking at this community, in 20 years from now, 30 years from now, my age group, mid-50s, will be the largest group in the world. So how do we continue to find a place up here, perhaps a transfer station for building some kind of assisted living? I have a 92-year-old mother, and she said, well, you're only going to live there for 20 to 30 years. And I'm like, no, I die here. So, we have to find a way to do that. We're all going to get older. So.
Anything that over go in the other direction.
Okay, great. And I hope we'll take these, because there's some other good ideas.
Yes,
we didn't have enough dots.
I know. David, you want to go next? Go right this way.
Okay, so we ranged all over the place. We talked about aging in place. Oh, okay. Aging in place, of course. You're gonna have to let me see that so I can remember what you're talking about. Transportation, the bottleneck of Highway 1. What we can do about that? That works both ways, both for people getting to us, but also us getting down to needed services. How could we deal with that bottleneck? We talked about an air service. We talked a lot about the perception of Sea Ranch and how we're going to get people to come here. As people age and need to leave, they need to sell their home. How do we attract younger people? How do we raise awareness of Sea Ranch to younger people? A lot of talk was around integration with Wallala, that without them we can't survive, and vice versa. But that also kind of led into a conversation about that Sea Ranch doesn't have a community hub, the community gathering space. And we talked about that Verdant View is potentially the ideal spot for that. It's the only commercial zone property on Sea Ranch. And we'd hate to see it all given over to mini storage. That would be a real bummer and a lost opportunity. Hopefully Chris Beach is not here. But let's see, what else did we do? So the hub, we talked a lot about conflicting ideas between full-timers and part-timers. That there's a definite dissected mindset there, or divergent mindset of what do part-timers want versus what do full-timers want. What are they looking for, and how do we integrate those two? We talked about who is going to occupy Sea Ranch in the future. The population is aging. Who's going to come here? And what do they need? Obviously they need fast internet. I think we all agree on that. Is the Sea Ranch going to be static or is it going to evolve? Okay, now Craven, the part you care about. So the green dots.
Yeah.
Integration with Wallala got green dots.
Okay.
The Air Service got a green dot, although that was my dot, I will say. Air Service?
Air
Service. The air transportation to and from the Sea Ranch. And the hub got a lot of green dots. And then there's a green dot, I think it's on managed evolution or evolvement. Basically that we must recognize the fact that we have to evolve, and how are we going to do that in a managed fashion. Yellow dots, the bird view as a hub got a yellow dot. The perception of the design review process, is it hindering or helping the Sea Ranch? That got 3 yellow dots. Is Sea Ranch government too entrenched? Got a red dot.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bird view as a hub got a couple red dots.
Okay, yellow dots, are we done with?
We're done with yellow dots, move on.
Okay, okay, go back to the red dots.
Okay, so Verdant View as a hub got some red dots.
Verdant View. Okay.
And then we asked the question, is the Sea Ranch governing body too entrenched? That got a red dot, probably from a board member. And Highway 1 is kind of the bottleneck factor limiting access to the Sea Ranch, got a red dot.
Highway 1.
And we all missed pizza night at Two Fish.
Pizza night.
All right, good, thank you. Jared?
Okay, we talked about several different topics, but we'll start with the dots. In the area of site-appropriate architecture, this refers to designing houses that are appropriate for the forest. They can be higher, but smaller footprint, versus designing houses in the meadows that can be more spread out. Not having one standard for the whole of Sea Ranch, but really appropriate to the site. That got a green dot. The other comment that was made at our table was that the current architecture is too suburbia. It looks too much like the suburbs. There's no inspiration in it. So how do we encourage the inspiration in architecture? That got a green dot. Aging in place, lots of topics to talk about, but the general topic of aging in place got 2 green dots. One of the ideas that was brought up at the table was things like perhaps ramps to the beaches rather than steps in the future. Sustainability was a fairly large topic that we talked about, and we talked about community sustainability, not necessarily nature sustainability. How do you make the community grow? How do you make participation by younger generation more a part of the community? And how do you encourage it? That got 2 green dots, by the way, for younger generation. How do you encourage the younger generation? We got a green dot in the area of just community as it stands, rather than how do you sustain it in the future. The topic of thinking about community got a green dot. I'm not sure exactly what that person was referring to in the subtopics, but it did get a green dot. So those are the green dots. The area of community sustainability got a yellow dot as a general topic. The notion of adding gathering spots in the community, such as coffee shops or benches and places to meet, got several yellow dots, three yellow dots for that particular topic. There was a suggestion made under general community integration with Gualala that perhaps we should have participation in the GMAC, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, by the way, but hopefully other people know what that is here. But that got 3 red dots, and again, I don't understand why that is. There must be some history here.
So that's a red dot?
Yes.
Okay.
There were three red dots for the suggestion of Sea Ranch participation in GMAC. So those are the dots. In a kind of a general comment at our table, very much concerns about aging in place. What do we do? Again, I mentioned sustainability, both human, community, architectural, nature, and economic sustainability for the Sea Ranch. That was a topic that really consumed quite a lot of our time at our table. And then landscape, how do you keep the meadows from getting overgrown by trees, and how do you keep the trees from getting cut down? Non-natives, how do you prevent non-natives? So that pretty much sums it up for us.
Table 3 was the home of the most red dots. We'll get to that. First of all, we talked about the green dots. We want to talk first about what was good things, and perhaps people like the idea that we could have better access transportation-wise to Sea Ranch and better transportation access within Sea Ranch. So we got a couple green dots, not many. So that was also yellow as far as transportation issues. The term jitney and Uber were used. The greatest red dots of all came from helicopter joyrides. The fact that the concept was what things might we see, and that we talked about the fact that it is a beautiful area, and that people might enjoy being able to see it in that fashion, and that might be something that might happen. And as far as that, obviously it's not something that's a popular idea. We also talked about other things. That's the end of our dots.
Okay.
So as far as that, we also talked about what changes might we see. I was unaware of the increased fiber optic network that's going to be about a year away, and that obviously gives ability to have much greater communication and access to the outside world. And something that might help with all of our property values is to bring people who are younger here, because they might be able to be here and work and telecommute much easier. So that's something that is a tremendous factor for the future. We also talked about being aware more of our natural environment. Healthcare as being something that we weren't sure where it was all going to go. We've got a wonderful doc here today that is hopefully going to be a part of that for many years to come. But there are obviously questions and people who are involved in healthcare and think that it's very doable, but something that we have obstacles to overcome in that. As far as the younger demographic, I think that's something that there are things we can do. As a part-timer here, I find that my wife and I come up here for a 3 or 4 day weekend, typically once a month from Sacramento. It is very challenging to get here. We've been coming here for 30 years. We fell in love with this place the first time we came here. But it is obviously a very difficult commute to get there. And as far as improving access, whether it was by a bus or other service there that could be, and once you got here, how could you get, if you had a second car from whatever central point to get to your home, would be something that could be obviously enjoyable. The remoteness, and as far as I think that pretty much covers what changes we might see, we thought. And as far as what factors block fulfillment now, obviously the distance and remoteness is something that is both a mixed blessing as well as an obstacle. Closed minds sometimes can also cause an obstacle. And I think that we have a great community and a great place here. And in sharing that, enjoying it, and the comment was made a number of times that people who have come here and are from Sacramento or other places have no clue about what Sea Ranch is. So we had some good thoughts and heard some other great ones, so I think that's it.
themes that are starting to emerge, is several of the points that came out of our table or points that other folks have brought up too. I think there was a kind of a sense that as we move to the future, we've got to always kind of bring along our past because we have such a unique and interesting path. We all sign a covenant when we buy a piece of property here that says we're going to live to these ideals. And so as we move forward in the future, education becomes a key component of that, and sort of constantly reinforcing the original concepts about Sea Ranch that sort of led us all up here in the first place. There was talk of diversity. How do you attract younger people? And there was a lot of, I think, general enthusiasm about the high-speed internet coming fiber optic project. That's coming down because we live in a time where it's becoming easier and easier to telecommute from remote places, which might bring more and more sort of long-term Sea Ranchers, year-round people up here. So that was considered to be something that I think was really being appreciated. Part of we also talked a little bit about design review, and I think you talked about it in the concept of education. Design review is one of those ways to help reinforce those original concepts, to reinforce the sense of scale. A lot of people have talked about some of the newer developments, and do they maintain those Sea Ranch ideals? And it's really the design review processes that's we have people in charge of to try and help us deal with scale, with common space, retention, and new housing developments. And then healthcare for all ages, sort of, I guess Sea Ranch's Obamacare or something. The ability to age in place is clearly key for many people to consider living up here full-time, and that becomes a difficult issue to deal with. And then there's some people that have attended a lot of these forums and meetings and everything, and there was kind of a general questioning of, gee, we have a lot of input and we have a lot of these meetings, but whatever becomes of it. And so is anyone listening? Are you listening? So I think that about covers it.
We started from a lot of different directions, talking about all sorts of different stuff, and among them... Into the microphone. Okay. The issues facing Sea Ranch, the idea of the declining volunteerism, stagnation in... sorry. Well, generally, we started from a lot of different directions, and what we came to talk about mostly was the idea of community, and aging in place was another issue, and how do we support the community through volunteerism is declining. How do we encourage people to volunteer? It's an important part of the place here. How do we educate people? One of the ideas was one of the things that came out of that was the idea of greater density, and one of the things co-housing, yeah, co-housing, and exploring that through experimental. Someone was talking about the experimental building project, I forget the word, that came out of the forum in October. So, those are sort of the things on my half of the table.
Actually, both halves say about the same thing. We started off with a question about what, about the forum itself, and didn't it bring up the, rather as a theme, kind of the lack of a center at Sea Ranch. And so we got off on a discussion of that and some of the history of why we don't have a center now, and it's a long history. It isn't that that is not a problem that we've known about, or at least a fact of life here. There were several suggestions, including the verdant view and simply integrating more with Gualala, because Gualala is our de facto center for most commercial services. We went on to talk about the changing demographics and whether that is why there's been some drop in volunteerism here. We had a very strong comment about we're too white and we're too gray as a community. Look at us here. That it's a little hard to know how you would go about increasing diversity here, but we can barely call ourselves a diverse community. We talked about healthcare and the possibilities that new technologies through the internet could improve some of the services here, but we're unlikely to ever have a situation where people with chronic illnesses that need constant management, like chemotherapy or kidney dialysis, are going to find that they get it right here. We don't have sufficient population now on the coast to support some of the services that people would like to have. So there's some reality. We talked about more integration with Gualala and the need for a broader participation of the whole community in events here at Sea Ranch. And in addition to co-housing, the thought of granny units was also discussed in our group. And I think our green dots were all on co-housing idea. We had, I think, four. With a suggestion that 39B is a pretty well-known location for that kind of thing if it could ever happen here. I think that's it.
Our biggest desired change in the group was by far some kind of energy independence, or solar power, perhaps wind power. That got, 7 green dots. And some things that we thought maybe in the way of that are a certain amount of inertia, that there wasn't enough motivation, perhaps it's not enough of a crisis yet to really motivate us to go towards a very much more independent energy source. But there seems to be a lot of potential for it here. And that we need agents of change to help make that happen, or to create some leadership. Another desired change was for aging in place, perhaps to do design a pilot kind of sustainable house project that might be ADA compliant and be a good example for future projects. Transportation, both regionally and locally, seem to be an issue that we should think about providing transportation for people who can't drive, to help aging in place. There was an idea of creating a hub for electric cars or car shares, a shuttle service or a network of volunteers, which we have to some extent now, but that could really be expanded. There's a desire to recruit a younger generation of population here, that we could organize retreats to help make that happen or have more creative events. We also thought there should be a place for those things to happen, more of a community center where community events could occur, educational events, ecology and arts type of events that would combine arts and sustainability. And also that there seems to be a missed opportunity for shared, more shared living, like shared meals and something more like co-housing. You know, we have our individual homes, we have these great commons, but do we actually get together and share meals as groups? So also a very good internet connection seems absolutely critical, and perhaps that's on the way. Some things that we thought were in the way of these things are cost, especially for the transportation issue, cost, and finding some kind of administrative organization that could run that and maintain that and have a hub location for it. Emergency transportation and weekend medical care and urgent care seem to be really big issues in the way of aging in place. There was a suggestion of having a Sea Ranch app for communication to help expedite communication for various things, I guess, like our listserv, but maybe more accessible. And then concerning the larger region, we felt there were probably lots of government restrictions and energy company resistance to having energy independence here. Those would have to be addressed. That we would need a larger buy-in from a larger region to help support services networks such as transportation or medical, better medical support. And also that we could much more explore government or private grants for various things like creating a transportation network. Okay, that's it.
One more.
Actually, while who's getting this, I just wanted to add on the integration with the larger community. One idea that came up at our table was the potential expansion of the fiber optic project to Guelala, which would really, and also help our medical care too. So I didn't say that right. You can see we had a lot of ideas, see how nicely and tidily ours is written up. I'll try and present it in some orderly manner.
Green dots.
We actually, oh, you want the green dots?
Yeah, green dots first.
Green dots, okay, let's see. More sustainable projects, support local community, self-reliance, and social responsibility. Create a local economy to support. Under the billing of talking about people who are part-time and people who are full-time, and how can we support things that we all want to see happen here. We talked about we're okay with raising our dues in order to expand our staff more here, and also to support more local creation of jobs. And under that, we were talking about things like transportation services and helping people get sustainable alternative energy projects going here and making careers out of those things. Senior care services, all the things that we want, but we're either getting old enough to need them or we're too old to volunteer to provide all of them. So let's bolster the local economy by creating them. Let's see, and we got a green dot for aging in place, which is many of those things also. Services for the coast. The county has services, our county does, but we can't get to them or they can't get to us. So how do we duplicate what they have to offer out here? We talked about using internet to connect with services by, what was the name of that? It's like Skype-like services where if you need an interview with somebody or a health interview, you do it by internet. That's going to help a lot. We had a mention also of the Seaside Institute, and that was in relation to expanding our own knowledge, not being isolationists, bringing in other people to talk to us about what they see happening in the world and how that can apply to us here. I think I got that one too. All right. Okay, that was our greens, David. You want yellows?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's see, yellows were, one of the yellows is on something we call the structural issue of integrating our part-time and full-time population, and realizing that the part-timers don't always have time to participate in the community, and so we're not really a community of 2,000 working bodies, but often only 500 people can do all of that. So our thoughts about how to deal with that are to, one of the thoughts we had was to increase our focus and our political will together for getting things done. And to make sure that we are actively trying to find solutions and ways to do things that we all talk about, we all agree on. And it's unlike some other things I think I heard, we didn't feel like there was a real difference of opinion among part-timers and full-timers about what we all wanted and loved about Sea Ranch. It was just a matter of how do we get these things done. So the phrase political will came up 3 or 4 times, and it sounds very meaningful. Let's figure out what we want to do, and let's figure out what the solutions are to doing it, other than, I think I mentioned already, we were interested in raising dues if that's what it takes for specific projects. We were interested in bolstering the local economy and creating more jobs out here. What else is yellow? We have a yellow on things that we want not to change about Sea Ranch, that we want to see are under the 50 years out. We'd like our values to remain the same in terms of we want to be able to see the night sky. We want to be able to preserve the animal corridors here and the habitats. We want to keep an eye on what happens with the GRI lands and participate in making them in whatever way we can community resources, naturally well cared for environments and recreation areas. We talked about managing and preserving, how to find a balance between both of those concepts. We need to manage more the landscape that we have here in order to keep it healthy, and some views came into that a little bit, but we also want to preserve the values of the original, the values in the way that Donlyn described them at the beginning. where the land is whole. The parts are parts of the whole. Yellow, we got some yellow stickers on overcome our isolationism in terms of new ideas. And we actually had an interesting conversation about the public-private, defining those better too. Let's see. I'm not doing this in the order that we talked about it. It's hard to remember it all. There were a few things that we actually started with that I thought were important to mention. We started talking about architecture, and one of the things that was brought up is how do we continue to refresh the Sea Ranch architectural context? What are new ways that buildings coming in will still appreciate the original concepts and maybe be different in terms of materials and appearance? And one thought was to have a contest and let the award winner build a house so we can all see what the house of the future might look like here. We talked about maybe considering more multifamily types of dwellings. We talked about when houses age here, they will be in a new category, and what can be done with the aging houses. That also was fit into a category of what if you have a house that you don't particularly think is a very Sea Ranchian looking house, but it happens to be the house you live in. What are some ways that that house could be made to fit better into the larger design scheme that we all appreciate? Our group also talked a lot about sustainability and how we might, we just talked a lot about more emphasis on how to become energy independent here in the future, how to build alliances with agencies that are part of the county that we live in or part of the Mindanoma area, and how to band together and do some energy independent projects over the next decade or more. We talked about the continual need to educate about what Sea Ranch is about. Every 4 or 5 years, our population seems to turn over, sometimes by as much as 40%. So if we don't constantly have meetings like this and discuss who we want to be and where we want to go, then the next generations coming in may take it in a whole different direction. So education was a really big topic. As somebody said, let's call that reselling the rules. I think that's about it. You guys have anything more? Okay, that's us.
Well, I think there are too many ideas on that chart to go through one-on-one and discuss. And I wasn't keeping stickers on the discussion, but which was very, very important, and I think brought up many things. It's clear that the question of however many ways we interpret it, of aging in place, is something that came up often. It's clear that concerns about sustainability in the broadest sense of the word came up very often, including community as well as materials and design. There was a number of references to the architecture and how it is that it relates to the original intentions, and then how to keep those intentions alive and taking new form. I think I heard maybe even more than anything else concern for education, for keeping in touch about what the issues are, what the intentions have been, what has been happening with the Sea Ranch and is likely to happen. That, of course, is one of the reasons we're having this session and had the other original session. So it will, these we will take. We will look and try to call down that, and then we will be using these to work with trying to define another program in the fall that will maybe bring in some outside people again, we don't know, but would be actually something that would take on some of the what does it take to make this happen questions in the next round with some background work on that. Are there other are the things I left out that someone should bring up from that little thumbnail summary?
The community hub.
The community hub, yes, it came up over and over again. And it's interesting because so often when that comes up, people say we don't need it. But then it came up again and again and again. It's partly, I think, a matter of having some place where you can show yourselves to each other. And in a way that doesn't require booking. Because schedules do get complicated. We can tell you've been trying to find a time to get this. There's something there that people are striving for as that keeps coming up. It isn't something to do without understanding what incredible network of stuff we have in Wallala and Stewart's Point and Annapolis, which somehow doesn't seem to figure in discussions very much. But that's something that there clearly is an issue about money. Yes, Jackie?
You know, it might be better understood as an aspect of the education issue, because I think the wish to go to a place where somebody knows us.
Right.
And there was also
that was nice. Yeah.
There was a wish expressed for a place we could go to get knowledge about the place.
Right.
And so, you know, a place where the community could gather and talk about their values and not going away
Right.
from their values. I mean, so maybe it wasn't thought about just purely a social way, but as part of the educational mission and community mission.
Right, which might have exhibits and things as well. Good. Other comments? That's good, David. Thank you.
Transportation.
Oh, yes. The transportation came up repeatedly and in interesting ways. The idea of jitneys and little local organized things. The transportation and medical obviously was there too, but that's within aging. But transportation and medical both are resistant because of needing larger numbers usually than are easily assembled here. But that shouldn't stop us always saying that something about that can happen, because localized transportation could be a really important thing at all, and it could certainly be important for people who have limitations in being able to go places and special services and so on. So that's a really important one. Yes, Scott.
It's definitely one of the things that is missing from any conversation is the lodge.
Yes. Yes, we didn't talk about that. Yeah. We didn't. The lodge. There are two actors actually that will have tremendous influence on us within our bounds are the lodge and the golf course. Those are both privately owned, subject to substantial change, and those are things that really have to be thought through and understood. And I don't know in what way, but that the lodge clearly has great potential, both in terms of bringing people here, in terms of being, as it once was, a gathering place, although it's at that end. It also has the chance for integrating people who are from outside the community in various ways that can be very helpful to us. And it will bring more people here. The entitlements for the lodge are 100 more units. They're not planning to do that at this point, but that's what the plan allows. At one point, when we were working on expansion of the lodge many, many years ago, there was a notion of transferring some of those, 40 of those, up to the golf course. that actually was approved by the county, but that project didn't go ahead. But then, thank you, Scott, because that's actually a big player in the local situation. All right, I'm going to suggest one more thing over and above the great gratitude for all of you spending all of this time. I'm going to return to something which I meant to include in my introduction, which is reading at least one of these summaries from the earlier session, from the Once and Future Sea Ranch. And that's from Kathleen McGeegan. It's the first on your blue sheet. The ecology of the Sea Ranch in its origins of respecting nature, of being inspired by nature, of trying not to overbuild, of building houses that felt authentic with honest materials derived from the local vernacular, and at a scale that gave people what they needed, but not much more. Of creating communal spaces and, in fact, the idea of community. These are all powerful values. And those are the values and the lessons of Sea Ranch to which we still need to pay attention and which we value so much. I thought that was an extraordinary summary on the part of an outside visitor from a national perspective. I think that's enough. We're only 10 minutes past the time to have refreshments in the back of the room. Except, John, you were going to close it. Yes, I beg your pardon.
On behalf of the Vision Committee, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's workshop, which, as Donlyn mentioned, will form the foundation for the next architectural forum in October. And I would be remiss if I did not mention both Lisa Dundee and Peter Jennings, without whose efforts this entire day would have not been possible. Join us for some refreshments, which were donated by Surf Super, and wine, which was donated by Fort Ross Winery. Thank you.